Ever wondered what it feels like to have a billionaire father? Trust me, it's not the fairy tale you're imagining. My dad is one of the most powerful real estate moguls in New York City. He owns half of Manhattan. He dines with senators. And he believes, truly believes, that money makes him God. He planned my entire life before I could even walk. Which schools, which friends, which career, which husband. When I was 16 he told me, love is a luxury for poor people. Nor in Ashford, you marry for strategy. 6 months ago I broke his rules. I fell in love with a man he called Trash Van Queens, a mechanic with grease under his fingernails. And at my own wedding, in front of 300 guests, my father stood up and disowned me. What he didn't know? That Trash was about to become his biggest regret. Hey everyone, I'm Fiona, 28 years old. If you're watching, hit subscribe and tell me where you're tuning in from. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I read every single one. Now let me take you back 8 months ago, to the night I told my father I was marrying a man he'd never met. The Ashford penthouse on the Upper East Side had floor-to-ceiling windows that looked down on Central Park like it owned it. Which, in a way, my father believed he did. That Thursday evening, we sat around the 12-seat walnut dining table, imported from Italy, my mother reminded guests at every dinner party. The Hermes place settings gleamed under the chandelier. A bottle of 2010 Chateau Margaux breathed on the sideboard, probably worth more than most people's monthly rent. My father, Richard Ashford, sat at the head of the table, his Patek Philippe catching the light every time he raised his wine glass. At 58, he commanded every room he entered. Real estate empire, political connections, a name that opened doors across Manhattan. I've arranged a meeting for you this Saturday, he said, not looking up from his filet mignon. Harrison Wells III. His father and I are finalizing the merger. It would be beneficial for you two to get acquainted. I set down my fork. I can't make Saturday. Now he looked up. I have someone I want you to meet, I continued, my heart hammering against my ribs. Someone I'd been seeing for 6 months. His name is James and I... Who? My father's voice cut through the room like a blade. What family? Wells? Montgomery? Don't tell me it's one of the Hartley boys. You don't know him. The silence that followed was suffocating. You've been seeing someone for 6 months, he said slowly. That I haven't vetted? That I haven't approved? I don't need your approval to date someone, Dad. He leaned back, his jaw tight. In this family, Fiona, love is a luxury. Marriage is strategy. Who is this person who dared approach my daughter without going through me first? I met James 6 months earlier, on a Tuesday afternoon I was never supposed to have free. I'd escaped a particularly brutal board meeting, where my father had criticized my marketing proposal in front of the entire executive team. Adequate, he'd called it. Acceptable for someone still learning. I was 27 with an MBA from Columbia, but in his eyes I was perpetually a child playing dress-up. I found a coffee shop in Brooklyn, the kind with mismatched wooden chairs, a menu written in chalk, and not a single person who recognized the Ashford name. I ordered a black coffee and sat in the corner, trying to remember how to breathe. Rough day? I looked up. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with kind brown eyes and calloused hands. He wore a faded flannel shirt with oil stains on the sleeves. His smile was warm, unpolished, real. That obvious? I asked. You've been stirring that coffee for 10 minutes without drinking it. He sat across from me uninvited, and somehow I didn't mind. We talked for 3 hours. He told me he was a mechanic, owned a small auto repair shop in Queens. He asked about my day, my interests, my dreams. Not once did he ask about my family or what my father did. I don't care what your last name is, he said later, walking me to the subway. I just want to know what makes you laugh. No one had ever said that to me before. He always paid in cash. Thick folds of bills he pulled from a worn leather wallet. He refused to go anywhere too fancy, preferring diners and hole-in-the-wall restaurants where the food was good and pretense was absent. I thought he was being careful with money. I had no idea what he was really hiding. My father didn't wait long. 3 days after I mentioned James's name, I was summoned to his office at Ashford Properties headquarters. The corner suite on the 42nd floor, with its $15 million Basquiat on the wall and its view of the entire financial district, was designed to intimidate. It worked on most people. A manila folder sat on his desk. James Carter, my father read aloud, flipping through pages. Age 32. Owns a one-bedroom apartment in Queens, assessed value under $400,000. Operates a small automotive repair shop, Carter's Custom Garage, with estimated annual revenue under $200,000. No significant assets, no family connections of note, no investments beyond a basic retirement account. He closed the folder and looked at me with something between pity and disgust. This is who you've chosen? A grease monkey from Queens? He's a good man. Good men don't build empires, Fiona. Good men get swallowed by them. He stood, walking to the window. I had the best private investigator in the city dig into this. James Carter. Do you know what he found? Nothing. No debts, no scandals, no skeletons. Just nothing. A completely unremarkable man. Maybe that's exactly what I want. He turned, his eyes cold. You're in Ashford. You don't get to be unremarkable. He doesn't want anything from me, Dad. He doesn't care about the money or the name or any of it. That's what you can't understand. My father laughed. A sharp, bitter sound. Everyone wants something. The only question is when they reveal it. He slid the folder across the desk. End this, now, before you embarrass this family further. I left the folder on his desk and walked out without another word. His investigator found nothing suspicious because James had been carefully, very, very carefully. James proposed on a Sunday morning. We were in his Queens apartment, small but spotless, filled with morning light streaming through windows he'd cleaned himself. He made me pancakes, burned slightly at the edges, and handed me a velvet box across the kitchen counter. Inside was a ring. Simple. Elegant. A diamond on a gold band that caught the light like a tiny star. I know I'm not what your family expected, he said quietly. I know I can't give you penthouses or private jets. But I can give you this. I will never try to control you. I will never make you feel small. And I will spend every day trying to make you happy. I said this before he finished speaking. That night I called my mother. 2 months, I told her. We're getting married in 2 months. I wanted you to hear it from me first. The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. You're killing me, Fiona. Her voice cracked with practiced pain. You're absolutely killing me. Do you know what this will do to your father, to our reputation? I'm getting married, Mom, to someone I love. Love? She spat the word like poison. You think love pays for your lifestyle? Love maintains your social standing? My brother Derek texted me an hour later. Heard you're marrying some broke mechanic. Bold move, sis. Can't wait to see you slumming it in Queens. I didn't respond. My father's call came last. His voice was ice. You want a wedding? Fine. I'll give you a wedding. A pause. One you'll remember for the rest of your life. I should have heard the threat in his words, but I was too happy to notice the knife being sharpened behind them. The first strike came at Kleinfeld Friday. I'd scheduled an appointment to try on wedding dresses, nothing extravagant by Ashford standards, just a classic Bara wing I'd had my eye on. The consultant, a woman who'd served my mother for years, greeted me with a tight smile. I'm so sorry, Miss Ashford, but there seems to be an issue with your account. My credit card declined. Then the backup. Then the emergency card my mother had given me, for special occasions. I called the bank from the fitting room floor, surrounded by tulle and silk I suddenly couldn't afford. I apologize, Miss Ashford, but your accounts have been deactivated. The primary account holder removed your authorized user status yesterday. The primary account holder, my father. I sat there in my slip, staring at my phone, as the reality settled over me like a shroud. He hadn't just threatened. He'd started a financial siege. James found me an hour later, still sitting in the fitting room. I texted him through tears I refused to let fall in public. Let me help, he said, reaching for his wallet. No. Pride made the word sharper than I intended. I can't. I need to figure this out myself. But he pulled out a stack of cash anyway. $100 bills, at least $2,000, held together with a simple rubber band. More money than any mechanic should casually carry. I want to, he said simply. Let me. I looked at that stack of bills, too thick, too casual. And something flickered in the back of my mind. But I was too overwhelmed to examine it closely. For the first time in 28 years, I stood in a store I couldn't afford. And I realized something terrifying. Without my father's money, I didn't know who I was. But I was about to find out. The social fallout was swift and surgical. Within a week, my phone went quiet. Friends I'd known since prep school suddenly had scheduling conflicts. Lunch dates were cancelled. Group chats went silent. Then came the texts, always apologetic, always cowardly. So sorry, babe, but mom says we shouldn't be seen together right now, you know how business works. XO. Hey Fee, this is awkward, but my dad does a lot of deals with Ashford Properties and, you understand, right? Nothing personal, but I can't risk my family's relationship with yours. Good luck though. 28 years of friendships, and every single one of them came with a price tag I was no longer worth. At Ashford Properties, where I'd worked in marketing for 3 years, colleagues avoided eye contact. The whispers followed me through every hallway. The corner office I'd earned was suddenly needed for restructuring. HR's email arrived on a Friday afternoon. Your position is being evaluated. Please refrain from client-facing activities until further notice. They didn't fire me. They just made sure I knew I was worthless. Through all of it, one person kept reaching out. A lawyer named Margaret Chen. No, wait, Margaret Smith. She'd been my grandmother's attorney before Grandma passed 2 years ago. Miss Ashford, her voicemail said, there's a matter regarding your grandmother's estate that requires your attention. Please call at your earliest convenience. I saved the message, but didn't return the call. I was too busy drowning to notice the life raft being thrown my way. That night, I scrolled through Instagram and saw Derek at a rooftop party with all my former friends. My mother had commented, "So proud of my son, family is everything." The message was clear. I was no longer family. James found us an apartment in Brooklyn. It was nothing like the penthouse I'd grown up in. No doorman, no marble floors, no view of Central Park. Just a bright 2-bedroom in a brownstone, with creaky hardwood floors, and a tiny balcony that overlooked a community garden. It's not much, he said, watching my face as I walked through the empty rooms. But it's ours, no one else's. I started to cry. Not from disappointment, from relief. Here, my father's shadow couldn't reach. Here, I could breathe. James held me while I sobbed out years of pressure I hadn't known I was carrying. He didn't promise to fix everything or rescue me from my problems. He just stayed. I spent the next weeks sending out resumes to every marketing firm in the city. The rejections came fast, too fast. Somehow, everywhere I applied already knew about the Ashford situation. Doors slammed shut before I could even knock. I'll figure something out, I told James over dinner. Takeout containers spread across our second-hand kitchen table. I have to do this myself, he nodded. I know, but I'm here if you need me. That night, I woke at 2 a.m. to find his side of the bed empty. Through the cracked bedroom door, I saw him in the living room, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in hushed, urgent tones. The quarterly projections need adjustment before the board meeting. No, don't push it to Williams, I'll handle the technical review myself. I must have made a sound because he turned, saw me, and quickly said, I'll call you back. Work stuff, he said with a small smile. Go back to sleep. I nodded and returned to bed, but I lay awake for hours, wondering when mechanics started having board meetings. 1 week before the wedding, my father appeared at our apartment. I hadn't seen him since I'd walked out of his office. Now he stood in our Brooklyn doorway, his Tom Ford suit as out of place as a diamond in a sandbox, looking at our modest living room like it might be contagious. I'm here to make you an offer, he said, not bothering with greetings. James stood beside me, silent and watchful. My father pulled out a checkbook. $5 million, cancel the wedding, come home, we'll pretend this little rebellion never happened. I stared at the blank check in his hand. $5 million, more money than I could earn in a lifetime on my own. Enough to start fresh anywhere in the world. No. $10 million. His pen hovered. Final offer, I'm not for sale, Dad. His face twisted into something ugly. Then you're a fool. And when this marriage fails, because it will, don't come crawling back. You'll have nothing, no inheritance, no trust fund, no shares in the company, no Ashford name to protect you. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a hiss. You'll be nobody, just like him. He gestured at James with contempt. James, who hadn't said a word, who stood with his hands loose at his sides and a strange cold calm in his eyes. Mr. Ashford, James said quietly. I think he should leave. Oh, the mechanic speaks. My father laughed. Enjoy her while you can, son. When the shine wears off and she realizes what she's given up, she'll resent you for it. I don't think she will. Something passed between them. A look I couldn't quite read. My father's smirk faltered for just a moment. Then he turned and walked out without another word. He'll make the wedding hell, I whispered. James took my hand. Let him try. Our wedding was supposed to be small. James and I had planned an intimate ceremony at a restaurant in Brooklyn. 50 guests, mostly colleagues from my marketing days who'd stayed loyal, and a few of James's friends from the garage. Simple. Meaningful. Ours. We arrived to find 250 extra guests already seated. They filled every corner of the restaurant, spilling out onto the patio, women in Chanel and Oscar de la Renta, men in bespoke suits worth more than our rent. My father's worried, uninvited, and unapologetic. My mother sat in the front row, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. Derek scrolled through his phone, looking bored. And there, at the center of it all, stood my father in a three-piece Brioni suit, a glass of champagne in hand, smiling like he owned the place. Because in every way that mattered to him, he did. Surprise, sweetheart. He kissed my cheek before I could pull away. You didn't think I'd miss my only daughter's wedding, did you? What is this? I demanded. What did you do? I promised you a wedding you'd remember. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Consider this my gift. I looked around at the sea of faces, Manhattan's elite, my father's business partners, society columnists with their phones ready, and realized what he'd done. He'd turned our intimate celebration into a spectacle, a stage, and he was about to be the star. James squeezed my hand. We can leave right now, say the word. I looked at the guests, at my father's triumphant smile, at the altar we'd chosen together. No. I straightened my shoulders. We're getting married today, whatever he's planning, we'll face it together. I had no idea how bad it was about to get. My father waited until the ceremony was complete. We'd exchanged vows, James's words simple and sincere, mine thick with emotion. The officiant pronounced us married. For one perfect moment, surrounded by the chaos my father had created, I was happy. Then came the clinking of glass. Richard Ashford rose from his seat, Dom Perignon in hand, and the room fell silent. 300 guests turned to watch him like spectators at an execution. A toast, he announced, his voice carrying across the restaurant. To my daughter and her husband. The pause before husband dripped with contempt. I built everything I have from nothing, he continued, pacing slowly toward the center of the room. Every dollar, every deal, every opportunity, earned through blood and sacrifice, and I dreamed that one day, my daughter would marry someone worthy of that legacy. He stopped in front of our table, looking down at James like he was examining something unpleasant on his shoe. Instead, she chose this, a grease monkey from Queens, a parasite with nothing to offer but calloused hands and empty pockets. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone laughed nervously. I saw phones rising, recording. So I'm here to make an announcement. My father's voice hardened into steel. From this moment forward, Fiona Ashford is no longer my daughter. She is hereby removed from my will, cut off from her trust fund, and stripped of any claim to Ashford properties. He turned to face the crowd, arms spread wide. Let this be a lesson. When you choose poverty over family, you get exactly what you deserve. He drained his champagne, set the glass on our table, and smiled. Congratulations, sweetheart. You're finally getting everything you asked for. The silence that followed was deafening. James didn't flinch. He rose slowly from his chair, straightening his tie, a simple navy blue, nothing designer, and faced my father with an expression I'd never seen before, calm, controlled, almost amused. Thank you for coming, Mr. Ashford, he said, his voice steady and clear. "And thank you for your blessing." My father snorted. "Blessing? I just told you you're getting nothing." "I heard you." James stepped forward until they were face to face. "And I want you to know, we don't need it." "You don't need it," Richard laughed, harsh and mocking. "You own a garage worth less than my watch. You live in a shoebox apartment. What exactly do you have to offer my daughter?" James smiled, a small, private smile that sent a chill down my spine and my father's. "Something more important than money, Mr. Ashford. I have her." Somewhere in the crowd an older man stood up, silver-haired, distinguished, wearing a suit that even I could tell was quietly expensive. He watched the exchange with sharp eyes and the hint of a smile. I'd seen him earlier among James's guests, but hadn't thought to ask who he was. My father glanced at the man, then back at James, and for just a moment, something flickered across his face. Uncertainty maybe. The sense that he was missing something. "Enjoy your poverty," my father spat. "When she's tired of struggling, when she realizes what she's thrown away, and she will. Don't say I didn't warn you." "Real wealth isn't measured in bank accounts, Mr. Ashford." James's voice dropped. "Meant only for us. But you'll understand that soon enough." My father laughed again, but it sounded hollow. He had no idea how prophetic those words would prove to be. My father had just finished his performance. Now it was my turn. I took James's hand and turned to face 300 people who expected me to crumble. The socialites in their designer gowns, the businessmen calculating my fall, the society reporters already crafting their headlines. They were all waiting for tears, for begging, for surrender. They didn't know me at all. "My father believes money is everything," I said, my voice carrying across the sudden silence. "He believes love is a transaction, family is a business arrangement, and people are either useful or worthless." I looked at my mother, who couldn't meet my eyes, at Derek still scrolling his phone, at the crowd of strangers who'd come to watch my humiliation like it was entertainment. I used to believe it too. I spent 28 years trying to be valuable in his eyes, the right school, the right degree, the right clothes, the right smile. And you know what I got? Adequate. Acceptable. Never good enough. My father's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Today, I chose something different. I chose to be loved for who I am, not what I'm worth. I squeezed James's hand. And if that cost me everything I was supposed to inherit, then it wasn't mine to begin with. I turned to the remaining guests, some looking uncomfortable, others moved. "If anyone here came to watch a tragedy, I'm sorry to disappoint you. This is a celebration. If you want to leave, the door is right there. But if you want to stay and actually celebrate with us," I smiled. "Welcome to our wedding." About 30 people gathered their things and left. But nearly 270 stayed, including some of my father's own guests. He hadn't expected that. My father stormed out with my mother and Derek trailing behind. The door hadn't even closed before the atmosphere shifted. Like a storm passing, the air in the room suddenly felt lighter. Someone started clapping. A genuine warm applause that spread through the crowd. The DJ, who'd been frozen in shock, finally started the music. And just like that, our wedding became ours again. The cake came from a local bakery in Brooklyn. 3 tiers of vanilla buttercream that tasted better than any $5,000 designer creation I'd had at society weddings. James and I cut it together, laughing when the frosting smeared his nose. "Any regrets?" he asked as we swayed together on the dance floor, my head resting on his chest. "Not a single one." "Even after all that?" I pulled back to look at him, this man who'd stood beside me while my father tried to tear us apart, who'd never raised his voice or lost his composure. "Especially after all that." I touched his face. He didn't even flinch. Something passed behind his eyes. A shadow, a secret. "I've faced worse than your father." "What does that mean?" He kissed my forehead instead of answering. "Someday, I'll tell you everything. I promise." The night ended with dancing and laughter, and a feeling of lightness I hadn't experienced in years. Our guests, the real ones, the ones who stayed, surrounded us with genuine joy. But as James held me close during the last dance, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something he wasn't telling me. The mysterious older man from earlier had congratulated James with a knowing handshake before leaving. James's late-night phone calls about board meetings. Whoever my husband really was, I had a feeling I was only seeing the surface. The real story was yet to come. Now, before I continue, I want to pause here and talk to you directly. If you've ever felt like your family didn't see your true value, type "same" in the comments. I read every single one, and I want to hear your story. Hit that like button if you think I made the right choice standing up for myself. And if you haven't subscribed yet, trust me, you're going to want to hear what happens next. Because the twist? You won't see it coming. Let me continue. The honeymoon period lasted about 6 weeks. Not the romance. James and I were happier than ever, learning how to build a life together in our Brooklyn apartment. No, what ended was my hope of finding work. I'd applied to 43 marketing positions across the city. Entry-level, mid-level, anything that would use my MBA and 3 years of experience. Every single application came back rejected, most without even an interview. Word traveled fast in Manhattan. The Ashford name, which once opened doors, now slammed them shut. Nobody wanted to risk offending Richard Ashford by hiring his disowned daughter. Maybe I should look outside the city, I said one night, staring at my laptop screen. Another rejection email. Another door closed. James was quiet, standing by the window. Or maybe you shouldn't work for anyone else. I can't exactly start my own company right now. I have maybe $3,000 to my name. Sometimes that's enough. I laughed bitterly. In what world? He didn't answer, just watched me with those calm brown eyes that I was beginning to realize hid more than he showed. Our savings dwindled. I insisted on paying half the bills. Some stubborn part of me needed to prove I wasn't just a kept woman. James never complained, never pushed, never offered to simply take care of everything. He respected my pride even when it made things harder. But at 3 a.m., when I couldn't sleep, the doubt crept in. What if my father was right? What if I couldn't survive without the Ashford name? What if I'd given up everything for a man I was only beginning to know? James found me on the balcony one night, wrapped in a blanket, crying silently at the city lights. "Tell me what you need," he whispered. "I don't know anymore." 3 months after the wedding, my phone lit up with my mother's name. I almost didn't answer, but some desperate part of me still hoped. "Darling." Her voice was honey smooth, the way it got when she wanted something. "How are you? We've been so worried." "Have you?" "Of course, you're still my daughter, no matter what your father says." A strategic pause. "You know, he hasn't formally changed the will yet. There's still time if he wanted to. Reconsider." Reconsider my marriage. Reconsider your choices. You've made your point, Fiona. We all understand you wanted independence, but surely by now you've realized that man can't give you the life you deserve. I thought about James making me coffee every morning, remembering exactly how I liked it. About the way he held me when the rejection emails piled up. About his steady faith in me when I had none in myself. "I think he already has," she sighed. "You're killing me, Fiona. Every day you stay with him is another day you're throwing away your future." The next attack came from Derek's Instagram, a photo from some rooftop party. My former friends, champagne, the Manhattan skyline. Caption. "Some people choose love over luxury. Hope they're enjoying their freedom. #poverty is romantic." The comments were brutal, laughing emojis, inside jokes I used to be part of. My mother had liked the post. James came home that evening to find me staring at the screen, tears tracking down my cheeks. He took the phone gently from my hands and looked at the post. For a moment, his jaw tightened, the first real anger I'd seen from him. "They'll rewrite this story soon," he said quietly. "I promise you." "How can you be so sure?" He kissed my forehead instead of answering. 4 months after my wedding, the letter arrived. Heavy cream paper, Ashford Properties letterhead, the law firm's seal embossed in bold. "Dear Ms. Ashford Carter, this letter serves as formal notification that Richard Ashford has executed amendments to his last will and testament. Per these amendments, you have been permanently removed as a beneficiary. Your previous designation to receive 20% of Ashford Properties holdings, estimated current value, $200 million, has been reallocated. Additionally, Trust account number 47,891, established in your name, has been dissolved per trustee authority. These changes are final and irrevocable. Regards. $200 million. Gone with a signature. I sat on our tiny balcony as the sun set over Brooklyn, watching the sky turn from gold to purple to black. For 28 years, I'd been promised that money. I'd never wanted it, not really. But knowing it was there had been a safety net I never realized I was standing on. Now the net was gone, and I was in free fall. James found me there hours later, the letter crumpled in my hands, my face swollen from crying. I saw the envelope, he said, sitting beside me. I'm sorry. I don't care about the money. I laughed bitterly. That's the irony. I never cared about the money. But knowing he could just erase me like that, like I never existed. James was quiet for a long moment. I have something to tell you, he said finally. Something I've been waiting for the right time to share. He took my hand. But not yet. In 3 months, there's an event. I need you to trust me until then. What kind of event? The kind that would change everything. He met my eyes. Can you wait that long? I didn't understand. But I trusted him. Yes. The next day I finally returned Margaret Smith's call. Her office was in a brownstone on the Upper West Side, old money quiet, with mahogany bookshelves and leather chairs that had seen decades of confidential conversations. Thank you for coming, Mrs. Carter. She smiled warmly, emphasizing my married name in a way that felt deliberate. Your grandmother would be very proud of you. Hearing Grandma Maggie mentioned made my throat tight. She died 2 years ago, the only person in my family who'd ever truly seen me. You said there was something about her estate? Margaret nodded, sliding a folder across her desk. Before she passed, Margaret Thornton established a separate trust, independent of anything controlled by your father. She instructed me to inform you of it only after you married someone of your own choosing, without your father's approval. I stared at her. What? She knew, Fiona. She knew exactly what kind of man her son-in-law was, and she wanted to ensure you had options. Margaret opened the folder. The trust contains $500,000 in diversified assets. It became yours the day you married James Carter. $500,000, my grandmother's final gift. There was a letter inside, written in her familiar, elegant script. My darling Fiona, if you're reading this, it means you finally chose your own path. I am so proud of you. Your grandfather and I built our life on love, not money. We had nothing when we started, and everything when we ended, because we had each other. This money is not a fortune, but it's freedom. Use it to build the life you want. Never let anyone tell you what you're worth. All my love, Grandma Maggie. I cried in that office for 20 minutes. For the first time in months, they were tears of hope. 5 months after my wedding, I launched Thornton Creative. Named after my grandmother's maiden name, a deliberate choice to separate myself from the Ashford legacy. I rented a small office in a co-working space in Soho, designed my own logo, and reached out to every small business owner I'd ever met who wasn't connected to my father's world. The first client was a coffee shop in Brooklyn, the same one where I'd met James. They needed hype with their social media presence, and I charged them half my normal rate just to build my portfolio. The second client was a vintage bookstore in the Village, then a family-owned restaurant in Queens, then a tech startup in Jersey City. Word spread, not through Manhattan's elite networks, but through the real New York, people who judged work by results, not family names. Within 2 months, I had more clients than I could handle alone. I was building something that was mine. I'm proud of you, James said one evening, watching me work on a campaign from our kitchen table. I couldn't have done it without Grandma's trust fund, or without you believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. He smiled that quiet smile. You would have found a way. That week, I received an email that made me freeze. Subject, Partnership Inquiry. From marketing@nexusai.com. Dear Ms. Thornton. Nexus AI Technologies is interested in discussing a potential marketing partnership with your firm. We are impressed by your work with emerging businesses and believe your approach aligns with our brand values. Please contact us at your earliest convenience. Best regards, Nexus AI Marketing Division. I'd never heard of Nexus AI, but a quick Google search showed they were one of the fastest growing tech companies in the country. Strange that they'd found my tiny firm. Very strange indeed. I didn't connect the dots immediately. But the business news that month was full of one story. Nexus AI Technologies was looking for real estate partners to build a massive data center on the East Coast. The deal was worth $50 million, and every developer in New York was scrambling for it, including, it turned out, my father. Derek mentioned it on Instagram, of course, a photo of Richard shaking hands with someone at a business conference, caption: Dad closing in on the biggest deal of the decade, Ashford Properties plus Nexus AI equals fire. I scrolled past it without much thought. But a few days later, James came home with a curious look on his face. Did you see the news about Nexus AI? The data center thing? Yeah, everyone's talking about it. I looked up from my laptop. Why? No reason. But he was smiling, that small private smile I still couldn't decode. Just interesting that your father wants it so badly. Everything's a competition with him. He probably doesn't even need the money, he just wants to win. James sat beside me on the couch. What would you say if I told you he's not going to win? How do you know? Because I know who runs Nexus AI. Something cold trickled down my spine. James. He took my hand. There's a gala next month, the Tech Charity Foundation event at the Met. Nexus AI is the main sponsor and... He paused. Their CEO is making a rare public appearance. Okay. I want you to come with me. To a tech gala? James, I don't know anyone in that world. He lifted my hand and kissed it. You know me. The way he said it, like it meant more than I understood, made my heart skip. What aren't you telling me? Everything. And soon, I promise. 2 weeks before the gala, James sat me down. It was Sunday morning. He'd made pancakes again, our weekend tradition now, and the apartment smelled like maple syrup and coffee. But his face was serious in a way I'd rarely seen. I need to tell you something, he said, and I need you to let me finish before you react. My stomach tightened. Okay. The auto shop is real. I do own Carter's Custom Garage, and I do fix cars there when I can. He took a breath. But it's not what I do for a living. It's a hobby. A way to stay grounded. Stay grounded from what? From the other part of my life. He met my eyes. I work in tech, Fiona. I'm not just a mechanic, I'm significantly involved in the industry. I stared at him. What does significantly involved mean? It means I'm not poor. Not even close. He ran a hand through his hair. Nervous, I realized. I'd never seen him nervous. I've been hiding the truth because I needed to know that someone could love me for who I am, not for what I have. James, you're scaring me. Just tell me. Not yet. Not completely. I want you to see it for yourself, at the gala. He pulled something from his pocket, a thick envelope with elegant calligraphy. This is your invitation, VIP access, my guest. I took the envelope. Inside was a heavy cream card, gold embossed. The Tech Charity Foundation cordially invites you to our annual gala guest of honor, James Carter. Guest of honor. James. My voice came out as a whisper. Who are you? He took my face in his hands, his eyes more vulnerable than I'd ever seen them. I'm the man who loves you. Everything else is just details. The 2 weeks before the gala felt like living in a dream I couldn't quite wake from. I googled Nexus AI CEO obsessively. The search results were maddeningly vague. The company was famous for its privacy, no photos of leadership, no public statements, just a reputation for brilliant innovation and a mysterious founder who avoided the spotlight. Forbes had run a piece 6 months ago. The billionaire nobody's seen, inside the world of Nexus AI's phantom founder. No name, no face. Just speculation about a young tech genius who'd built a $4 billion empire, while staying completely invisible. I thought about James. His late-night phone calls about board meetings, the technical jargon I'd overheard, the casual stacks of cash, the mysterious older man at our wedding who'd looked at James with something like respect, or deference. The pieces were all there. I'd just been too close to see the picture. The night before the gala, James presented me with a dress. A Valentino, black and elegant, probably worth more than our monthly rent. I didn't ask how much it cost. I was beginning to understand that money wasn't a concern for him. Had never been. "Are you angry?" he asked quietly. "That I didn't tell you sooner?" I looked at this man, my husband, who I was only now beginning to truly know. "I'm not sure what I am," I admitted. "You lied to me. I withheld information to protect something important. There's a difference." "Is there?" He nodded. "Tomorrow you'll understand everything, and then you can decide how you feel." He kissed my forehead. "Whatever you decide, I won't blame you." I barely slept that night. In a few hours, I would walk into a world I thought I'd left behind, and discover that my husband wasn't the struggling mechanic my father had mocked. He was something else entirely. The Metropolitan Museum of Art had been transformed. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling of the Great Hall like frozen starbursts. 500 of the most powerful people in technology, finance, and media mingled beneath Renaissance masterpieces, champagne flutes catching the light. The women wore couture, the men wore power like a second skin, and everyone was watching us. I walked in on James's arm, my black Valentino suddenly feeling inadequate against the sea of designer gowns, but James moved through the crowd like he owned it, nodding to people who nodded back with deference I couldn't explain. "James Carter," a silver-haired man said, shaking his hand warmly. "Looking forward to the announcement." "Senator Mitchell," James replied. "Thank you for coming." Senator. James knew senators. We'd barely made it to the bar when I spotted them. My father, my mother, and Derek, standing near the auction displays, working the room with practiced smiles. Richard's eyes swept the crowd constantly, searching for someone. Then they landed on me. His face went through a rapid series of emotions. Confusion, recognition, contempt. He started walking toward us, my mother hurrying to keep up. "Fiona!" He stopped a few feet away, looking at James with a predator's smile. What a surprise. I didn't realize they let the hype into these events. James said nothing, just watched him with that unsettling calm. "Don't tell me you crashed the party." Richard laughed, looking around for an audience. "Security should really do a better job of screening for Mr. Ashford." A woman in a headset appeared at his elbow. "The CEO of Nexus AI will be speaking in 15 minutes. You requested a seat at the sponsor table?" Yes. He waved her off, still smirking at James. "I have a very important meeting after his speech." If only he knew. The lights dimmed. A hush fell over the great hall as the massive screens flickered to life. The Nexus AI logo, a sleek silver N intertwined with a circuit pattern, appeared, followed by sweeping footage of their technology, self-driving systems, medical AI, climate modeling. "Ladies and gentlemen," the MC announced, her voice echoing through the hall, "tonight marks a historic moment. For the first time ever, the founder and CEO of Nexus AI Technologies will address the public in person." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. My father leaned forward in his seat, adjusting his tie. I saw him mouth something to my mother, probably strategizing about his approach after the speech. "This company has revolutionized artificial intelligence across every sector. Their innovations have changed how we live, work, and connect. And the mind behind it all has, until now, remained private." James squeezed my hand. "Are you ready?" "For what?" He smiled. Not his small private smile, but something brighter, something free. "For everything to change." The MC's voice swelled. "Please welcome the CEO and founder of Nexus AI Technologies, valued at $4.7 billion and named by Forbes as one of the most influential people in tech." James let go of my hand. "James Carter!" The room erupted in applause. My father's champagne glass froze halfway to his lips. My mother's mouth fell open, and James, the mechanic from Queens, the man my father had called trash, walked onto that stage like he'd been born there. The screens behind him lit up with his name, his face, his title, James Carter, CEO and founder, Nexus AI Technologies. I looked at my father. His face had gone white. Completely, utterly white. And for the first time in my life, I saw Richard Ashford at a loss for words. James spoke for 20 minutes. He talked about innovation, responsibility, and the future of technology. He was brilliant, articulate, passionate, and magnetic, in a way I'd only glimpsed in private moments. The audience hung on every word. I barely heard any of it. I was too busy watching my father. Richard Ashford sat frozen in his seat, staring at the stage like he was watching a ghost. The color had drained from his face and never returned. My mother kept touching his arm, whispering urgently, but he didn't respond. Derek had stopped pretending to be bored and was now openly gaping. When James finished his speech, the standing ovation was thunderous. 500 of the most powerful people in America were on their feet, applauding the man my father had called a grease monkey. James found my eyes in the crowd and smiled. Just for me. The reception afterward was chaos. Everyone wanted to meet the mysterious CEO who'd finally emerged. Investors, politicians, media moguls, they swarmed him like moths to flame. But James had one destination first. He walked directly to where my father still sat, seemingly unable to stand. I followed, my heart pounding. "Mr. Ashford." James's voice was pleasant, professional. "I believe you wanted to discuss a business partnership." My father looked up. His mouth opened and closed several times. "You?" His voice came out strangled. "You're the CEO of the company you've been pursuing for 2 years." James pulled out a business card. Simple, elegant, undeniably. "James Carter, Nexus AI. Perhaps you've heard of us." Richard's hands shook as he took the card. Forbes later confirmed what everyone in that room was calculating. James Carter was worth $4.7 billion. My husband was richer than my father by a factor of 2. The mechanic was a billionaire. My father recovered faster than I expected. Within seconds, his shock transformed into a businessman's smile. The same one he used when closing deals, when pretending to like people he'd later destroy. "James." He stood, extending his hand like they were old friends. "I had no idea. This is wonderful news. I always told Fiona she had excellent taste." The lie was so blatant I almost laughed. James didn't take his hand. "He told me I was trash, Mr. Ashford." His voice remained perfectly pleasant. "You called me a parasite, a grease monkey. You said I had nothing to offer your daughter." You have to understand, I didn't know. Whether I fixed cars or ran companies, I was the same person. The only thing that's changed is your perception of my value." James finally took the extended hand, but not to shake it. He pressed his own business card into my father's palm. "Which says more about you than it does about me." Around us, people were watching, listening, recording on their phones. My father's smile strained. "Let's discuss this privately. The data center deal. I'm sure we can come to an arrangement that benefits everyone." "I've already made my decision about that." James's voice carried just enough to be heard by the nearby crowd. "Nexus A, I will not be partnering with Ashford Properties." "What? Why?" "Because I don't do business with people who treat their families like assets to be traded." James stepped back, sliding his arm around my waist. "Your daughter chose love over money. You punished her for it. I don't reward that kind of behavior." The whispers spread like wildfire. By morning, this story would be on every business page in America. Richard Ashford had just lost the biggest deal of his career to his own son-in-law. "Okay, I need to stop here for a second. Did any of you see that coming? Be honest, type shocked if you didn't, or called it if you did. I want to know, and if you've ever had someone underestimate you based on appearances, you're not alone." That's the lesson, isn't it? Never judge a book by its cover. Subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on notifications. Because what happened next? That's where it gets really good. Back to the story. The fallout was immediate and merciless. By midnight, the video from our wedding, my father's entire toast calling James trash, was everywhere. Someone had finally posted it, and now it had context. The man Richard Ashford had publicly humiliated was worth $4.7 billion. The headlines wrote themselves. Real estate tycoon mocks son-in-law at wedding. Turns out he's a tech billionaire. Ashford Properties, CEO, learns extensive lesson about judging books by covers. The $50 million mistake. How one father's pride cost his company everything. Within a week, 2 of my father's other business partners announced they were reviewing their arrangements. One major investor pulled out of a development project, citing concerns about judgment and leadership. The social media comments were brutal. Every business forum, every society blog, every corner of the internet was laughing at Richard Ashford. But the sweetest twist came from Derek. My brother, my Instagram mocking, champagne toasting brother, showed up at our apartment 3 days after the gala. He actually rang the doorbell like a civilized person. James. He shifted uncomfortably in our living room. Look, I wanted to apologize for the things I said. The Instagram posts. It was immature, and You wanted to apologize, Jane said calmly. Or you wanted access. Derek's face reddened. Come on, man. We're family now. Think about the partnerships we could create. Ashford Properties and Nexus AI, working together. The same Ashford Properties that disowned my wife? James stood. The same family that cut her off and mocked her for marrying me? He opened their front door. You made your choice 6 months ago, Derek. We're not family. We're just people who share a relative. The door closed. Derek left. Some people only apologize when they want something. James understood that better than anyone. My mother called 3 times before I answered. Fiona, darling. Her voice was thick with tears. Real or manufactured, I couldn't tell anymore. You have to understand, I always supported you. I wanted to speak up at the wedding, but your father, you know how he is. You didn't say a word, Mom. I was afraid. You know what he's like when he's angry. I had to protect myself. You had to protect yourself. I let the words hang. What about protecting me? Silence. I have something, I said quietly. Something Grandma's lawyer gave me. A letter that was supposed to stay sealed. I heard her sharp intake of breath. Grandma's lawyer found an email in the estate files, Mom, an email you sent to Dad 2 days before my wedding. I pulled up the screenshot on my phone, the one Margaret Smith had reluctantly shared when I'd asked about family communications around that time. You wrote, Richard is right. She needs to learn. Let her struggle for a few months without money. She'll come crawling back and marry Harrison like she should have. The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. That was taken out of context. Was it? My voice was steady now. You didn't defend me, Mom. You helped plan my punishment. You stood there while Dad humiliated me, and you were part of it the whole time. Fiona, I'm not angry. And I realized, saying it, that it was true. I'm just done. If you want to be part of my life, really part of it, you'll have to earn it. Through actions, not words. What does that mean? It means I'll call you when I'm ready. Please don't call me again until then. I hung up before she could respond. Some boundaries need to be built with silence. My father came alone. No driver, no entourage, no Tom Ford armor. Just a tired man in wrinkled clothes, standing in our Brooklyn doorway with something I'd never seen before on his face, humility. May I come in? I stepped aside. James stood by the window, watching but not interfering. My father looked around our modest apartment. The second-hand furniture, the small kitchen, the photos from our wedding on the wall. And for once, he didn't seem to be calculating its value. I've lost 3 partnerships this week, he said quietly. The data center deal is dead. The board is discussing whether to remove me as CEO of my own company. He laughed bitterly. Turns out public humiliation has consequences. I'm sorry about your business problems. No, you're not. And you shouldn't be. He finally met my eyes. I was wrong, Fiona. About James. About you. About what matters. I'd waited my whole life to hear those words. Now that they came, I felt tired. I don't need your apology, Dad. Then what do you need? I thought about it. Really thought about it. I need you to understand that I'm happy. Not because my husband turned out to be rich. I was happy before I knew. I'm happy because I'm respected, supported, loved for who I am. I stepped closer. Can you understand that? Something shifted in his face. Maybe not full understanding. Maybe that was too much to ask. But something. I'm trying. Then try harder. I put my hand on his arm. I'm willing to have you in my life, Dad. But not as someone who controls me. Not as someone who judges my worth by my husband's bank account. As my father. Just that. He nodded slowly. I don't know how to do that. Then learn. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. 1 year after our wedding, Thornton Creative had 15 employees. My little marketing firm had grown into something real. Not because of James's money or connections, but because of referrals from satisfied clients, and a reputation I'd built one project at a time. We'd just signed our biggest contract yet, a year-long campaign for a Fortune 500 company who'd found us through word of mouth. James still went to the garage on weekends. He said it kept him grounded, reminded him of who he was before the billions. Sometimes I joined him, handing him wrenches and learning the names of engine parts. My father was still learning too. Our relationship wasn't healed, might never be fully, but he was trying. He'd started therapy, according to my mother. He'd asked me to coffee twice, and both times he'd asked questions about my life instead of talking about himself. Progress, not perfection. That Christmas, we celebrated at James's mother's house in Connecticut, a cozy colonial with a garden and real laughter echoing off the walls, no designer decorations or catered meals, just family. Any regrets? James asked, pulling me close as snow fell outside the window. I thought about the penthouse I'd lost. The trust fund that vanished. The $200 million I'd never see. Then I thought about building something with my own hands. About being loved for who I was. About my grandmother's words. Never let anyone tell you what we're worth. Not a single one. He kissed me, and the snow kept falling, and somewhere in Manhattan, my father was probably still tallying his losses. But I'd stopped counting a long time ago. Real wealth, I'd learned, isn't measured in bank accounts. It's measured in the peace you feel when you finally stop trying to be who everyone else wants you to be. And just become yourself. If you take anything from my story, let it be this. First, don't let anyone define your worth by money, not even family. Especially not family. Second, actions speak louder than words. When people show you who they are, believe them. And when they suddenly change after learning your value, be skeptical. Third, true love doesn't ask you to abandon who you are. It gives you room to grow into who you're meant to be. Thank you for staying until the end. If this story meant something to you, hit that like button and subscribe. Turn on the bell so you never miss another story. Check the description for more stories like this, some twists are even wilder than mine. And drop a comment. Should I have forgiven my father completely? I read every single one. See you in the next one.